Hello and welcome to a new episode. Today we are going to add the customers to this game and also assign traits to both customers and servants. Let's go! So let's start by adding a new customer class, and I already created a node and attached a script to it, and now we make that branch a scene and delete the customer. And now we have the customer scene and the script. And now we do what programmers can do best, which is copy and pasting. So I'm just taking the servant script, copy everything, and copy it into the customer. And now we just do the adjustments that we need. Obviously, the class name is going to be customer. The element is called customer element, and we already have that class. We don't need a template for customers because they will be randomized. And we don't need isSelected because customers in itself cannot be selected. They get highlighted automatically. We need an add function, but we don't need a template in that add function. And it returns a customer. Moving on, we create a new variable that we instantiate, but not from servant scene, but from customer scene. And obviously, this variable still doesn't exist, and active servants also doesn't exist. Let's call it active customers. So we move over to the global script and add these. So we copy this and call it the customer scene. Of type customer. And we also add a new array holding the active customers. An array of type customer. And we go back to our customer class. We remove this line. And we have the add function. Finished. Awesome. We don't need deselect and onSelect, so let's remove those. And on the ready function, we add the element of type customer element. Next, we remove the signal, and we also need to add a reference to the customer grid from the Spring Manager. So let's go back to the Spring Manager script. And we add a new export that we call customer bar grid. And this is a VBox container. And I assign the customer bar grid to the graphical user interface. Let's go back to the customer class. And the only thing we are still missing here now is that the customer element scene is not in the globals function yet. So let's do this as well. And after saving, the error in this line disappeared as well. And with that, we already finished our customer framework and added the customer element to it. By the power of copy and paste. So let's go back into the Spring Manager root node and add a few customers just to see if everything works. Let's try it out. Everything's there. Great. So let's continue making the trait class. We start by adding some basic properties. Let's call one property description of type string. And let's call the other one title. And now we just need to create an add function So we start by adding a new static function that we call register, because the name add implies that we're adding something to something that is already existing, and register sounds more like you are creating a template, and this class is more like a template than an object. So let's call it register, and we pass globals because we already know that this is going to be a problem. And return type is trait. We create a new variable, this of type trait, that we are going to instantiate, and we will return this at the end of this function. And now we just need to put up the reference to create this. So globals trait scene instantiate, and we obviously need to add this to the globals as well. And maybe you can understand now why I wanted to have all these in the globals function, because having all these paths scattered around our hierarchy would be a pain to manage in the future. So having all these in one place is definitely a good idea. So back into our trait. And oh, we left out the double dot. All right. Now when we create this trait, obviously we want to immediately populate these properties. So let's add, oh, I forgot to put a note here for the expected type. And we also add title of type string and description of type string. And now we can create a few dummies and attach them to our servants and customers. So let's go back into our Spring Manager. And now we create a dummy trait in our Spring Manager root node. So we register a new trait with the title test trait and your description of lorem ipsum. And let's save. And now we want to adjust the servant class to take a trait array. So let's do this next. Now the basic traits a servant has should be part of the servant template and not the servant itself. So let's add into the servant template. By the way, I went ahead and replaced the surname property with title because I wanted to make this streamlined with the trait class. And unfortunately, I can't use the parameter name because name is a reserved parameter in Godot. So title is the next best thing. So let's start by adding an array of traits to the servant template. And we also want to pass this as a parameter to the register function. And now we can add traits to our servant template. So let's run a quick check. First, I put this up here so that the trait gets created before the template. Now we add the trait to an array and pass it to the template. And we add a quick debug message in which we want to access this first servant that we created here. So let's get the template of that servant, get the traits list, add first index, and we want to return the title of that trait. And if we do this, then we will correctly get this in our output console. Nice. Let's add a little bit of convenience to our data structure. I want the servant class to have a shortcut for finding traits of a specific name. So let's go back to our servant class and add a function that I call hasTrait. And this function expects the title as a string. And it returns the trait. And now we just need to loop through the traits in the template. So for t in template.traits. And if the title of that trait matches the passed title parameter, we return the template. Save. And now we have this convenient little function that we can use at any point in our code to quickly get all traits of a certain name. In the next step, we want to create like a global trait list where all the registered traits in the game get collected so that the customer class can randomize the traits it expects from this list. So let's go back to the trait class and add a static variable that we call trait list of type traits. Let's start with an empty array. And whenever we register a new trait to the game, it should also be added to this trait list. And now we can go to the customer class and put a randomize function there that assigns a couple of these traits from the list to the customer. And I just noticed that I never added the trait to the scene tree. This could have been a hard to detect problem later on, so it's good that we noticed this. Let's add this here. So I went ahead and created a new function that I called randomize traits inside the customer class. And in that function, we create a new array of traits. And now we will first create a duplicate of the trait list that we already have. So let's do this. And now we will randomly select 3 of that trait list. Let's store this in another variable of type array trait. And now we append to our picked array. And we want to append a randomly popped entry of that list. So let's take this list and use pop_add to both get an element from that list and also reduce it by that element so that we can't pick it again. So pop_add, and we now need an index, and the index will be randomly generated in a range from 0 to the length of that list. And we need to reduce by 1 because the range function is inclusive. So we get the correct index. And now we should have a list of 3 randomly selected traits from the trait list. So at the last step, we need to add a traits array to our class as a property. And when we're done randomly selecting, we replace the existing array with our picked array. And now we can add a few dummy traits and do a quick debug to find out if we did everything correctly. So as you can see here, I replaced our test trait with a bunch of copies of this trait with different names, and I was really creative here. And let's assign this customer here to a variable. And if we now print the list of traits of this customer, then we should see 3 entries and not 5 or 1 or whatever. So let's check this out. And in our output console, it shows us 3 different traits of different indices, so I can assume that this is working correctly. Great. But this is enough for now. This video has been long enough, and yeah, we did a lot of progress today. We are almost done with the main game logic. Great. I think we can expect to get something playable at the next video, which I'm really excited for. So stay tuned until then, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye bye!